So hi everyone, great to be here in California. We are Perttu, Ville and Valtteri and we come from Finland. And we represent the Musiclock, the actual product, and me and Valtteri represent the Taiste, the company behind the actual design and implementation. So first few words about our company, Taiste. We are a mobile-driven design and development agency in Finland. There's 20 of us, and our offices are located in Turku and Helsinki, Finland. And we mostly do client work, mobile apps and wearables, and web technologies and stuff like that. And when we first heard about this particular project, we were absolutely thrilled because of the simplicity of the idea. And as an agency, we really want to make projects that will impact on the world and change like really old methods of, for example, music theory learning, which is this case right here. But I'll let Perttu to talk about his ideas, and let's hear his personal story on this particular project.
Thanks. So I'll tell you a little bit about the background, because this is a classical invention story in that sense. We had a physical product that then became digital. So the problem with music, with learning music, if you have ever studied music, you probably know that music theory absolutely sucks. It's very difficult, it's very complex for some reason that I don't know why. But I was recently Googling easy music theory on Google, and this is what I found. This is music theory cheat poster, meaning this should be as easy as it gets, right? But the problem is when you have little children, starting to learn the piano or the guitar or violin, this is something that is just very difficult to grasp. And this is the problem with myself as well. I was 15, I was completely frustrated with the way it was taught to us. I wanted to compose and make music, but I had to struggle with music theory that I didn't see any point in. So this is not a new problem, obviously. There's a lot of, it's very crowded, the music education market. Not only apps, but you have YouTube videos, all kinds of online courses and gadgets and books. So there are a lot of different ways to kind of like tackle the problem. But the root problem with this whole thing is that it doesn't matter what platform you're using, whether it's app or a book, but if you approach the music theory the same way, it's still difficult to grasp. So after all, it hasn't been disrupted for hundreds of years. The methods how we present music has been the same since Baroque, basically. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to reinvent music, which is a silly thought. But as a 15-year-old, you're naive enough, unrealistic enough to actually try to do something like that. So I made this very simple discovery that first of all, we have 12 notes around which all music is based on. And I looked at the clock one day and I realized there are 12 numbers in the clock face as well. So why don't we replace the numbers with the note names? And this is how you make music clock. So you combine music and clock. And I built this concrete wheel that then represents those notes. And now I realized that if you want to teach a scale or a chord, you can make different scale discs that you put on top of it. So you take one of these discs, for example, and you put it on top, and the wings here, they cover the wrong notes, and the right notes appear in the holes. So for each scale, you have one specific shape and color, right? So when you put it on like this, you see the right notes for, in this case, C major scale. Now, if you rotate this wheel, you can move the scale to start from another note. And this way, you can actually solve any scale or chord within seconds, because now this is more of a system that tells you how music theory functions, right? So what I did is that we put music clocks in schools in Finland to get more validation. So they started using these in music school conservatories, and pretty soon we realized that we need to make this into an app as well. So one thing that I always wanted to do as a music student is I wanted to improvise and compose, make my own music. But it wasn't possible if you didn't know enough music theory. So I thought, let's make an app with which you can improvise and play solos without having to know years of music theory.
I could actually pass those to the audience.
You can actually try out the clock itself, so you see how it works. So now we have the grand staff, we have the wheel, and we have the piano. And I'll let you know how the process goes. So first you pick a backing track, so a musical style you like, let's say jazz or blues or pop or rock. I composed all of these by myself because I kind of like had a grasp like what kind of styles you might like to jam with as a user myself. Then there are some scales that fit those backing tracks. So I composed them so that whatever scale you pick, it will always sound good with that backing track. Now you can start jamming. So you see the right notes on the piano, on the grand staff, and then on the wheel itself. And now when you rotate the wheel, you can move the music up or down. So this is for piano. Then, of course, there are charts for guitar as well. And now we have all the scales and the app. And this is, of course, one part that we paid very close attention to, like what are the colors? How can we combine these elements in the learning process? So I'll let you know what it looks like in action. So the three elements, the wheel, the piano, keyboard, and the grand staff, they are linked to each other so that if you play a C on the piano, it will highlight on the wheel, and the same way around. And now there's a backing track playing in the back, and you can start jamming on top of the backing track. And the trick is that now, magically, it will sound very good if you just hit the right notes. There are a number of backing tracks to choose from, and then it will tell you the right scales, and that's how you get forward. So basically, what I wanted to do, I wanted to create a link or a connection to transform the theory into something tangible, and then use it as a tool to actually make your own music. So when I created the wheel for the first time, I went to school the next day, and I showed that to my friends. This is like this scale and this is that scale. And what made me kind of mad at the time was that they understand it after 15 minutes. I had spent years trying to learn the same thing. So what I'm actually doing here is like demonstrating music in a new way so that people would be more equipped to actually start making music straight away.
So when we started working on Musiclock at Taiste, we were kind of excited because we all kind of feel a lot of passion for music. And actually everyone in working in the team for this product were, we had a lot of, or a strong background in music, all of us. Not just as listeners, but players and performers and even as composers. So it was very beneficial to the whole thing because we had the knowledge of the music theory, which is really hard. So the fact that we knew something about it, we knew what we were kind of doing, made it possible to make it work better. As designers, it was also a bit extraordinary or a special project for us because we had to pay special attention to the motion design and the interaction design because Musiclock is kind of a complicated system that has a lot of interconnected moving parts and stuff, and it's always changing states. It has the scales and the keys and the backing tracks, and a lot of stuff is changing on the screen, and it's like essential to the whole thing. So we had to do prototypes at very early stage to make sure the users know what's happening when they use it.
And then the overall goal was to keep it as simple as possible, because we all saw what it's like to teach the regular way. So I wanted to have as few words and text in the app in general as possible. And the interesting thing was, can we still teach somebody, actually very complex things without explaining them with the text, but with animation and shapes and colors and UX. So just a few words about what's happening next. As a design process, it's also interesting to see how can we combine the physical world and the digital world. So this is what we're doing right now, building a curriculum to actually take you from the very beginning to the basics. In Finland it takes 3 years. So how can we actually implement both of the worlds together? And this is what's happening next. So it's not stopping here. So if you have questions, happy to answer. Thank you. Yes.
So congratulations, and also I saw that you guys have it on the floor already. I was going to ask you, what is the acceptance like from the user point of view? Like, how much acceptance is that you have?
How much?
Talking about acceptance, user acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you have some data or some knowledge of how well is this method accepted
Accepted, you mean
by the user.
how they understand it or how they...
Like if they like it, if it's in
Mm.
like you have conflicts, like in school,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
or at home.
So one thing that I was happy to find out is that teachers are actually quite creative in using this for different purposes. So I've heard use cases where they actually practice just scales up and down, which is normally super boring because you have to just play and play and play, but now you have a context and you have a backing track with which you can practice them. So this kind of stuff is quite usual. Of course, the challenge is always when you're inventing something completely new is that it's not a standard. It's something additional to the hundreds of years old tradition. So of course you have to kind of be sure that you're not trying to overcome that, but give another way to understand the same thing that hopefully is just a bit easier for people who are visual learners or find this kind of approach a bit easier.
Could you play the video you had before with sound on? I wanted to see, hear the stuff.
Yeah, if we have time for that, let me see.
I think we are. Yeah.
Mä oon kyllä ottanut itse asiassa ne äänet pois
Oh,
siitä itse.
the audio doesn't exist in this
Yeah.
version. Okay.
But you can check YouTube, the videos in
Yeah.
there also. So.
Website.
So yeah, thank you.